Hi, I'm Melissa at last, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to my garden, Rose Ether Cherubim. So these past few videos, and most likely these next few videos, are all going to be focused on God's strength and how it intercepts into all the areas of our life and how there's different forms of God's strength and how it shows up in our life. So today's title is You Are Armed with God's Strength. And God strengthens your spirit to keep you secure in life. So not only in protection, but in the decisions that we make and how He guides and shapes our path moving forward. So even if we're facing danger or we're putting ourselves at risk, God is still moving and guiding us away from those situations, whether it's at the hands of other people or in some of the decisions that we make. So let's just jump into this because this psalm is very powerful. The corresponding verse is in Psalms, and we're going to be in 18:32. And it's very powerful, and it truly encompasses how God protects us and how He sets us up for success in life, no matter where we're at in our journey or how things look to our untrained spiritual eyes. And one day, well, better said, our eyes, as we keep them on God, they will become stronger and spiritual and be able to grasp how our Father moves and does things. But in the beginning, when we're just walking in our faith, we tend to look at things as black and white, bad or good only. And where is God in the midst of all this, even my hard times? But He's there and He's shaping you and He's giving you the strength to move forward. So, Psalm 18:32. I'm going to go up to 28. So, Psalm 18:28. For thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God I have leaped over a wall. As for God, His way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in Him. For who is God save the Lord? Or who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength, and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon the high places. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken in my arms. 35. Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation. In thy right hand holdeth me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. 36. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. Honestly, we're going to want to read all of 18 to understand how God makes us strong. He is our strength. And no matter what situations that we find ourselves in, we're going to overcome because our God is a great God. And His salvation is our shield. And that shield is going to protect us in many different instances, physical and spiritual. So to let God's strength sustain you, you have to truly trust in the Lord. And we talk about this a lot. Trust is the equivalent of your faith. So trusting in God that He is going to take care of you, not panicking in the moments where you have to run through a troop of people. You have to get over that wall. You have to, fight, or you have to protect yourself, or you have to get to safety. Understand that God is going to do that. So not moving into a panic when you encounter any adversity in life. So a verse I really liked was 32. It is our God that girdeth me with strength and maketh my way perfect. So we remain strong in these moments and we trust in God no matter what our eyes are seeing or what we're feeling or how great the amount of people are against us. We know that whatever comes of this gives God a chance to showcase His strength how he loves us and protects us and guides us, but also how perfect it is. When we go back and we tell the story, we begin to be like, yeah, God was really there and he was working, and this story came out perfect in the grand scheme of things. We have to look at the long view versus the short view when we're allowing, God to strengthen us, to be our strength. So we do that and we see how perfectly formulated our story is. We're always safe. If we're always, well, I mean, we are always safe, but if we never face any adversity, we would be scared of everything. And our story would honestly be kind of boring. And maybe some people would prefer that, but true adventure happens in the face of risk. It happens in the face of, going through things that wouldn't happen if we just stayed closed off in our rooms and, didn't do anything. And one of the best things that God gives us is an adventure, is a story to tell. Ultimately, is a testimony for how great God is and how we can go out into the world and feel safe, feel strong, have an adventure because we know God is with us. So lately, as I've been reading and I've been meditating, God has been bringing me to a portion of my life where I don't really like to talk about it. And in my previous video, I spoke a little bit on that portion of life where, bad decision making and, being around people who don't truly make the best decisions in your regard or does things at your expense. And I don't like to talk about that period of my life. If I could go my whole life and never speak on it, that would be my choice to make. But again, this was all part of the adventure I went on and how, God was there with me as I went through struggles, as I went through multiple different ways I was treated or mishandled. So I'm going to give a little bit of a trigger warning right now. The next personal event that God is leading me to talk about has to do a little bit with, domestic violence and abuse. It's not horrible. I won't go into incredible detail, but I'm going to give you an overall story and how, when I reflected on this moment, God's strength has sustained me in the multiple times where I've had to kind of start over in life and move away from things that were harming me and creating stress and really putting a toll on my mental health. So, I had a partner many years ago. The relationship wasn't incredibly long. It was like a 4-year relationship, but it was incredibly tumultuous. And there was constant arguing and fighting, and a lot of things came to a head where I began to make a decision to begin to want to leave this relationship. It happened one night. There was, a party going on. Someone asked if they could use my vehicle to listen to music. I said, yeah, 30 minutes. I don't want my battery to die. And I got to get out of here by 11. And I need to get home by a certain time. So they left my car running. My battery died. And I sat in the front seat of my car, like trying to get it to start. And I'm like, no, oh my God. And I was so pissed off. I was so mad because I specifically asked. But again, me leaving a situation in someone else's hands, like I learned to not do that and to keep it in my hands as much as possible. And then, I relearned to leave it in God's hands solely. But at that point in time, the lesson was to not rely on other people to do right by you. So someone's like, you know what, I can bring my car around, I can give you a jump. Cool. So I had also, again, we're at a party, I had been drinking. My partner at the time was like, you're not going to be driving. I'm like, I'm not driving. I'm just waiting for them to bring, the car around. And I went off on how pissed off I was and, how I told them not to let it play too long and, just being pissed off. And again, they were inebriated. So they're like, well, you're not going to drive. I'm like, and when I get annoyed, I just begin to ignore the constant repetition of something. Because again, I know they're inebriated. I'm getting annoyed and I just kind of like begin to shut down. So They're like, get out of the car. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get out of the car. I'm literally waiting for someone to pull around and start my battery. Well, my partner at the time, he goes and he grabs me by the throat and by my shoulder and then yanks me out of the car and like, but lifts me off my feet. So this guy was 6'4", close to 300 pounds. He was a big guy and trying to intimidate me in that moment. And I got scared, I got angry, and I kicked him in the stomach. Well, I kneed him in the stomach, and then he tossed me to the floor, right? And I got super upset, and I started screaming at him and getting upset. And it just looks on the outside in, it just looks like two drunk people arguing. No one can truly tell what is going on in that moment. And I had a family member who was there and witnessed him choking me, witnessed him throwing me to the ground, and was laughing. And that stuck with me more than what my partner had did, because it was like, you're my blood and you found this shit funny. And I had to chalk a lot of it up for my brain's sake that people were drinking and people were inebriated. So, to take it with a grain of salt. And I got home safely. And the next day, a friend of mine who's really close to me was also there, who also witnessed it. She didn't come check on me or anything. And this is how I began to see how much people truly care about me or view me in a line of feeling safe, or were possibly intimidated by my partner at the time. And she was like, she came the next day, we were talking, and she was like, oh, you got really drunk and really emotional last night, huh? And I was like, that's not at all what happened. And I told her what happened, and then she was just like, oh, not like there was nothing there. So I began to really see people for who they were. And I also began to see how my partner at the time would twist stories and talk to people and tell people to make it look like I was overly emotional, I was crazy, I was the one who was creating the situations. And that's why, when you see people stay in abusive situations for longer than they need to, that's what's happening. Their partner is damaging their reputation. Their partner is stressing them out. And the reaction is all that sometimes people can see, from the woman. So, it's easy for me to see why sometimes people just stay, because one, you feel intimidated. Two, you love the person that you're with. You don't want to ruin their reputation, even though they're so okay with ruining yours to make themselves look like the good guy. And three, it's difficult to untwine your life. At that point, he and I were living together. There was just a lot of, we were living together. We had our friend group was, in essence, we had binded two friend groups together. We were making plans for the future. And now I have to figure out a way to remove myself from all of that I had invested in. So sometimes also a person has invested money and energy and years. And one of the greatest things that I heard is like, just because you spent a lot of time making that mistake doesn't mean you continue to invest in that mistake. But it's hard to let go, and it's hard to remove yourself. And the consequences that come from removing yourself from a domestic violence situation, an abusive situation, a lot of women are killed in the process, or really hurt, or have their property damaged, and or their reputation damaged. So there's a lot that comes with having to remove yourself from a situation like that. And glory be to God that I was able, and I was able. And a lot of my family members who love my partner, my ex-partner, they still hang out with him to this day. They still hang out and talk with him and spend time with my abuser, and they won't talk to me, or they're kind of like that towards me. And you know what? That's okay. Because if you're the kind of person that will hang out with somebody's abuser and have seen it with your own eyes and have not thought, if they're okay with doing this in public, imagine what happens to her behind closed doors. I don't need you in my circle. I don't need you around me or in my life ever. So when I reached that tipping point where I was like, this is not going to go anywhere, but I need to remove myself and to be okay with whatever consequences came of it. And of course, the consequences came, the I'm a whore. And, when he moved out and he took most of the furniture with him. And, there was a lot of different things that happened. And, my reputation was hurt. And I've never told this story because I just never wanted to, like damaging his reputation or whatever. That just wasn't on my agenda as a person. And when people would ask me, what happened? Why did you break up? I was like, oh, he was very controlling and I didn't like that. And they're like, oh, okay. And that seemed to be an acceptable thing for people to say, versus you going out and like, he whooped my ass, or he put hands on me and dragged me around like whenever he fucking felt like it. So it was like, no. But, God is calling me to talk about this story because, a lot of women go through this. And like it happens creepingly in a way. If you ever heard about, it's like a frog theory, I don't know if it's called the frog theory, but if you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly turn up the heat, the frog doesn't realize that the heat is creeping up on them until they're boiling and they're dead. And that's kind of what an abusive situation becomes. They push the boundary, push the boundary, push the boundary, but it's all these little small nuances that you don't think to pick up and look at until it's too late and there's big events that are happening, like the one I spoke about. And it changes your brain chemistry. It changes the way that you view things, and it changes how you view your support system. I realized my support system was not supportive at all. They didn't even deserve to be called a support system because they really didn't look out for me. And it highlighted the people who were looking out for me, who were like, hey, I believe you. I've seen it. And the people who were weak in the face of an abuser and would rather be liked by this person, who would rather be accepted by this person than to stand up for what's right. And, I thank God that he guided me away from that and gave me the strength to stand on my own, regardless of, what I faced, and to not care so much about what my reputation was going to be like for the next few years. And to just focus on healing and feeling better and getting back to myself and being happy and, being silly and figuring out what my life was going to look like outside of what I had planned for years. And to feel strong and cutting off people who acted like my support system, but truly weren't, and didn't give a shit about really what happened to me or didn't happen to me. And then to navigate through all the mental stuff that comes with being in a situation like that for years. So, God gave me the strength to move through all of that and to come out, a better person. And to a person that didn't want to talk about it, but I guess, well, no, I see. Now is the time to talk about those things. And it was a really rough patch for me. And I had to face a lot of different things, and I was still figuring out who I was. I was still in my 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, phase where to understand that, even your blood family will watch something happen to you and not care and not alert other people in the family. There was no, again, there was no support system. So I think that was what was the most hurtful to me and stuck out to me the most. And the fact that even to this day, I have family members who still hang out with my, with the person who was harming me, and will choose them over me who went through it. But you know what? it's all for the better. And it's not funny, but sometimes I laugh at inappropriate things because it's just like, damn, that's fucked up. But for God to bring me through that and then be able to talk about it and teach about it and say it in a way where it doesn't upset me or make me cry or shut me down anymore, like that, to me, that is only God's strength. I perpetually could be somebody who went through these multitude of things and is unhappy or does feel, damaged or tainted, but I don't feel any of those things. And there's this verse here. He maketh my feet like hinds feet, and setteth me upon the high places. And it's like, I had to get over that wall. I had to run through that troop of people. I had to do a lot of different things that, for a woman, no woman should go through. And a lot of women go through this. Men go through this too, right? So to go through all of this and still be set on high, you got to understand why I love my God so much. To still be blessed, to still be able to walk, with my head held high, and to still have all these great things in my life, regardless of what I went through, to still know that I am loved and God loves me in this perfect way. Let me pull up this other verse. And he loves me with a gentleness. A gentleness. 35. Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation. And thy right hand holdeth me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. Through gentleness. So, so to be treated harshly, but be held in gentleness by God. Okay. I'm okay, I promise. I promise. So, to be treated gently in a world that is so harsh with you, and that gentleness to secure your steps and move you forward and bring you to this place where you're going to feel better and you're going to be better, and to heal you along the way, like that's how I know that I am armed with God's strength, that I can walk away from anything, that I can face anything, and I can face the multitude, and I can face those who tower over me, and I can face any situation that disrupts my peace, that is harsh with me, that brings me upsetness, that I can face it, I can overcome it, and I can be in peace again because God is with me and I am armed with his strength, and I'm going to overcome every time because God is with me. So if I can do it, I know you can do it. And God's strength is always going to sustain your steps, and it's always going to sustain you in a way where you're going to overcome. And that's the beautiful thing about our God. And he's not going to be harsh with you when you don't need it. He knows when you need gentleness. He knows when you need relief from pain. And he knows when you need peace. And he knows how to get you there. If we listen and we don't panic and we give honor and remembrance to our God when we're going through any type of situation that tries to disrupt our peace, our mindset, and our connection with the Most High. So today, what we're going to reflect on is we're going to focus on the positive change that has occurred in our life when we stop trying to shoulder everything and allow God to be our strength. Because if I had tried to do it with my own mindset, with my own will, the peace that I sought out for my life, I might not be there yet. So the fact that I am there and I'm happy and I'm safe and I'm loved, that all shows that When you trust in God's strength, all the positive things that come from it, when you know that you are armed with his strength, that nothing can tear you down, that's what we got to reflect on, and the positive change. Now, of course, we can focus on the negative, but why would you? Why do you want to? The things you lost, God will replace them tenfold, a hundredfold. And just allow that to happen. Don't focus on what you lost. Focus on the positive change that occurred because you know that you're armed with God's strength. And then our prayer is going to be centered around thanking God for providing strength in times that we felt weak, in times that we thought things outside of us were stronger. And we have to stay in that remembrance. That is a prayer you might want to keep with you. Not might. You do. You want to keep that with you, and you want to pray it multiple times a week. As we pray multiple times through our day, let's take these different prayers that we're cultivating and focusing around and use them through multiple times through our day to remind God that we remember and we know all that you have done for us, and we know how you strengthen us, and we are grateful to you. So with our gratitude reflections and with our prayers, our God knows what's on our heart because we've spoken it to him. Of course, he can read our heart, but it's better when it's spoken. You know when somebody loves you, but you love when you hear it back from them. So again, our prayer, it just started to rain. Thank God for providing strength in the times that you felt weak. Okay? And really, really hone in on that. And you're going to remember that you are armed with God's strength because you are. His salvation is your shield. He has set you on the high places because he loves you and he is guiding your steps and he is with you every step of the way. You got this, friend. You are strong because God is with you. And you're going to knock down anything that's in your way to your peace and your happiness and the life that God has planned for you. I love you so much, friend. I'm glad we had this vulnerable moment, okay? But just remember, I love you, but God loves you more. We'll talk more about this next time.